Hello, this is Leith McCombs, and welcome to Dynamics and Interpretation, the 8th lesson in my Singing Skills series. So when we talk about dynamics in a musical context, we're talking about soft notes and loud notes. And that is in contrast to the overall volume of the piece, because that might depend on the instruments involved and how far you are from the audience or microphone amplifiers, all that kind of stuff. This is all, dynamics are the loud parts and quiet parts relative to the piece. Now, when you are singing, as it turns out, doing the quiet parts and being heard is an odd challenge. Because if I just take a line, like here's a line from Sorrow's Day by John Dowland. It goes, alas, I am condemned. Alas, I am condemned. There in that piece, you do the line loud, you do the same line soft. If I did it like that, no one would hear the second line, or it would be very, very weak. Instead, you will do a supported soft sound. So, alas, I am condemned. Alas, I am condemned. And that way, that second line still has energy, and it still has the harmonics that it needs to carry and be heard at a distance, as opposed to if I just went, alas, I am condemned, which won't carry nearly as far. So when we're working with that quiet dynamic, we need to hold that out. What we're doing, technically what we're doing is we're holding the breath back. We're having that, we're engaging at the larynx, and we're making the pressure, but we're letting very little of it come forward. So that's very actively holding the air down in your lungs, which weirdly feels very similar to singing loud. But it's just different physics going on. So a good exercise for that is to take a phrase and sing it in different parts of your range, and sing it medium. You don't need to do loud, but medium, and then sing it supported, what we call piano, soft, quiet. It's confusing. It doesn't mean it sounds like a piano. That's just the Italian word for soft, for soft sound. So I'll use that phrase. Alas, I am condemned. Alas, I am condemned. Alas, I am condemned. Alas, I am condemned. And keep that focused intent, and keep that engagement here, and keep that active support. And that will gradually build your ability to do that. The other thing you'll want to do practice-wise is try holding long notes and long phrases that way. And here's a very classical exercise called the messa di voce, is a measure of the voice. This one goes back at least into the bel canto era in the 1700s. And what it does is it practices going from the quiet to the loud and back again in a gradual way, much like we did in that hissing exercise, where we have the 4-count crescendo, 4-count diminuendo. This is that exercise done with a voice, and it's the messa di voce. So we just do that, usually in the upper middle of the range. Ready, go. Now, you heard me take a breath in the middle. I didn't reserve enough breath for that. It's actually a kind of hard exercise. You can do it again. And just like with the hissing, there's a natural tendency to drop off after the end of the crescendo. But you don't want that. You want to gradually level off. So naturally you'll tend to go, no, don't do that. Level off slowly. When you get to that top, go, and keep that focused sound. You'll know it's focused because you'll have that little bit of a natural vibrato going on. If you lose that, that means you've lost your focus, your connection here. And it's going weaker, so you need to practice that again. The other thing you need to know, practically speaking, about when you have to sing at a choir or dynamic, is your consonants still have to be as big as you can make them. So if I'm going to take that first example phrase they use, the dust of whose feet, etc., and do that at a quiet dynamic, I still have to make all those consonants heard. The dust of whose feet are the very host of heaven. So that the whole thing can be still heard at the back of the room, or at least the middle of the room. You've got to be realistic about this. So this lesson was dynamics and interpretation. Because just dynamics, that's a pretty short lesson. But dynamics are a big part of interpretation, being how you choose to perform a song. So we're looking at interpretation, starting with dynamics. The big obvious thing is make the big important parts loud and make the more intimate seeming parts soft. But how do you do that? Historically, there have been different ways to do it. In the Renaissance, we had what's called a stair-step dynamic, where that's where that John Dowland piece, the Sorrow Stay, comes, where you have, alas, I am condemned, alas, I am condemned. I sing the line at this volume, and then I sing the line at that volume, and there's no gradual transition there between the two. It's just one volume and then another volume. As you get later into the classical period, most of that tends to be more of these swells, long slow swells and crescendos and diminuendos. A natural tendency for people interpreting is to try to make too many swells too fast and too close together. And you want to avoid that. You want a nice long phrase. So using first example, the dust of whose feet are the very hosts of heaven. So there what I did was I did a gradual crescendo all the way through the word feet, and then dropped it and held one continuous dynamic through the rest of the line at a lower volume than where I started. That was one way to give this sort of sense of drama in a piece. But sometimes you actually want the high note to be quiet, because that has its own kind of drama to it. That pulls the listener in. So I probably wouldn't use it with that particular piece, but one really good example is Bring Him Home from Les Miserables. I have to take the pitch way down because, again, I'm a bass. There's this big crescendo, and then at the end it goes this high note and holds it very. The best singers I've heard do it hold that high note at the end is very, very quiet, dynamic, but it's focused again. So it might be, bring him home, bring him home, bring him home. I probably should have done that a little lower so I could give you a better tone quality on that. But you can hear that big bold thing, and then pulling it way back, and then ending this high, quiet note. Makes that really poignant. So those are some ways that you can use dynamics. It's a matter of preference to a point, but in general, it's a good rule of thumb. You want most of your swells to be line gradual, or else have a clear cutoff point of now I'm this volume, now I'm that volume. Now, other aspects of interpretation. are how fast are you going to do the piece? Are you going to stay strictly on the beat, or are you going to get a little flexy with it? And those all, again, depend on the needs of the song. But the most important thing you can do to make those decisions is understand the song. Understand what it's about. Especially, and if it's a foreign language, you need to really know what the actual meaning is, and not just, I mean, it's okay if you, reading the standard translation is a start, the singable translation, and that's fine. But better too, if you can do that and then also look up what the actual words mean. Look up, or get the literal translation too, because then you get a better sense of exactly what the author intended for the feeling of each word. Because the singable translation is not the same thing. It's designed to get the rhymes in the right place, get the syllables in the right place, and be something you can sing. But if you're going to sing it in another language, you really need to know what those words mean and use those words with the proper inflection. But beyond just the language, a song tells a story. And so you want to have that story in your head and see those events happening, those events that unfold in the song. And actually visualize them as you sing. And that will inform the color of your voice, the color of your vowels. And you can use that then to go, okay, maybe this section of the song, I need to get a little bit off the rhythm and have it a little more of a natural speech-like flow to it. Or maybe here's this point, I need to put a fermata, a little slow down point, or a little pause that holds a note, and then continue. But you want to really consciously plot out those points. After you get your understanding of the song, you plot those out, and you practice them in a consistent way. And then you're able to really bring a fully fledged interpretation to your piece. What are the tools that you can put into that interpretation? You have all the dynamics tools we talked about. Loud, soft, sudden change, stair-step dynamics, long swells, long pullbacks. You have fermatas, the extended notes. You can also, sometimes, most of the time you want to sing legato, but sometimes you might want to cut those notes short and use sparingly. A little bit of staccato can add drama to a piece. If I was going to take that, I've been using that first dust of whose feet example in a very legato way. The dust of whose feet are the very hosts of heaven puts an extra drama on the end of the phrase that you didn't expect. So that's another tool that you can play with. And there's others. As you listen to music, you listen for those, like, oh, what did that person do? Oh, that person put a little bit of a growl right at the beginning of that word. Or which a lot of pop singers do. And that can be very effective. Or this person almost sounds like he's crying. A lot of the classic Italian pieces have this kind of almost crying like cadence. Like you'll hear the sequence of the melody that is like someone weeping, and you can pull that out and have that sort of weeping character to it. But lots of things that you can bring into interpretation. And the main thing, again, is just understand your material. Understand the story you want to tell, how you want to tell the story, and then you translate that with all these musical tools into your finished piece. And practice it the same way until it just flows that way consistently. And then that's when you're really ready to give a moving performance. And so, thank you. I will see you in the next lesson.